All right, here's the story. It's by Janet Perlman, and it's called Cinderella Penguin or the Little Glass Flipper. So I predict that flipper is because they're penguins with flippers for arms, flippers for feet. So let's see what this story is going to be about. Oh, yeah, maybe it's a little glass flipper. There once was a young penguin named Cinderella who lived in a faraway land with her stepmother and two stepsisters. Cinderella was a kind and gentle penguin, but her stepsisters were selfish and vain. Cinderella did all the chores. She even had to pick up after her stepsisters, while they never had to do a thing. Vain, this word, means to be full of yourself. It was in our other story, this one right here. Cinderella or the Little Glass Slipper, if you guys remember that one. Hopefully you do. That was a couple days ago. Here's the picture for you guys to look at. There's Cinderella. There's the stepmom and the sisters. The sisters wore the finest clothes and slept in large, cozy feather beds with silk sheets and fluffy pillows. Poor Cinderella wore nothing but worn-out tatters and slept in the cold stone cellar up on a small shelf beside some old tin plates. One day it was announced that the Penguin Prince was giving a costume ball. The stepsisters and their mother received an invitation. Cinderella wanted to go too, but they just laughed at her. The prince would never want to meet a shabby cinder block like you. Well, that's so mean. For weeks, the house was filled with talk of the ball. The sisters had costumes made from the finest fabrics. They ate only the tiniest meals so they could have the tiniest waists, and they were always in front of the mirror, posing and practicing their curtsies. So like in the last story, this is what a corset is, and you pull it really tight to make your waist itty bitty thin. Women don't wear these anymore. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. Cinderella rushed about, ironing her stepsisters' costumes and helping them dress. Then, without a thank you or a goodbye, the carriage swept the stepmother and stepsisters off to the ball. Cinderella burst into tears. Sorry, I'm going to start that sentence over. Cinderella burst into tears. She felt so alone and unhappy. Oh, poor Cinderella. Suddenly, in a glow of blue light, the great fairy penguin appeared before her. "Why are you crying, Cinderella? Do you want to go to the ball?" she asked. Cinderella blinked back her tears. "Oh yes, more than anything." "Then you shall." First, said the fairy penguin, "you must fetch me a pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella didn't know how a pumpkin could help her get to the ball, but she quickly brought her the best one she could find. The fairy gave it a firm tap with her wand, and it magically turned into a beautiful golden carriage. There's a lot of similarities between this one and our last story. Then the great fairy penguin went into the kitchen and found 6 mice carrying a huge chunk of cheese. With a tap of her wand, they turned into a handsome team of 6 horses. She turned the cheese into a fat coachman in uniform. They were all marched out the door and took their places as if it were the most natural thing to do. "Now you can go to the ball. Are you happy, Cinderella?" asked the fairy. "Oh, yes," said Cinderella. But then she looked sadly down at her ragged clothes. Here's the picture. There's the cheese coachman and the 6 penguin horses that were penguin mice. "Oh, I almost forgot," said the fairy, and with a tap of her wand, Cinderella Penguin's rags became a beautiful gown with gold trimming and a real gold tiara. On her feet were a pair of glass flippers, the prettiest and most delicate that Cinderella had ever seen. Instead of glass slippers for a human foot, it's a glass flipper for a penguin flipper. "Now, one last thing," said the great fairy penguin. "The magic spell ends at the stroke of midnight. The carriage will turn back into a pumpkin, the horses back into mice, the coachman into cheese, and you'll again be dressed in rags. So you must leave the ball before midnight." Cinderella promised to remember. Then, waving goodbye, she stepped into the carriage and rode off, her heart filled with joy.